Hey guys, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today for our partner spotlight with Stephen Kelly from Vacation CRM. I love what they're doing in their space. I know that we have so many choices out there for technology providers inside of our businesses. But what I really, really love about VCRM is it's incredibly intuitive for solo advisors, but they have robust capability as you start to grow and scale your business. As you do grow and scale your business, there are so many important components to managing ICs, reporting. If you get into the group space, they have a lot of group functionality, and they also have a lot of functionality to initiate payment between the credit card vault and certain suppliers. So that's why I'm really, really excited to have Stephen on today. He does not have camera availability. He has been having a little bit of technical difficulties here today, but he is going to do a screen share. And so I am recording this call. It will be placed on our YouTube channel. If you do have questions, just pop them into the chat. And if it's appropriate for me to interject while Stephen is running through VCRM, I will. Otherwise, we'll wait until the end to ask him any questions. So without further ado, Stephen, I am going to let you go ahead and start sharing your screen and tell everybody more about VCRM and how you guys are different inside of the space. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining. So my name is Stephen Kelly. I'm the general manager for VacationCRM. Just a very brief history on me. I actually started out as an agent that used it, and this is not a brag because at the time we didn't have that many users because it was fairly new. But at the time, I was probably the user that knew it the best. So they started asking me to kind of help out on the side, answer some questions, and then next thing I know, they gave me an email address, and then my phone started ringing when people called the 877 line. So eventually I just jumped over and worked directly for them. It made sense at the time. I enjoy it. And that's been since 2015. So it's been quite a journey over the years. So we've been around since 2014 is when Vacation CRM launched. And, over the years, I think one thing that sets us apart is we truly listen to feedback from our users. And we've been very blessed with having a great group of agents that use our system, some of the top agents in the industry, those that do a lot of volume. So they have great suggestions for us because they are truly the people that need the most efficiency possible because they are flat out busy. We've listened to a lot of that feedback. We've learned from them. We've grown with their help, and we will continue to do that. So I'm going to share my screen here. And today I just want to kind of go over just kind of, I guess I could say a highlight reel of some of the features we have. The system is very robust, so, it would be impossible to go over everything in a single demo. So I just want to focus on some of the areas where I think we have a lot of strength. If you have any questions along the way, if I didn't cover something that you are curious about, throw it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer those. So we'll start here at the dashboard. So this is the first screen that any user will see when they log in. I am signed in as an admin user, so I don't know if you all are, ICs under an agency or if you are an agency owner. The system looks pretty much the same whether you are an owner or an admin user, or if you're an IC with, non-admin rights. As far as the dashboard goes, it's pretty similar. If you're under an agency that uses the system, you just won't have every option. So in most cases, you won't have a drop-down to view other agents' dashboard. That's typically an owner type thing. And then there's some system settings that you wouldn't have access to. But as far as how it looks and the processes, it's pretty much the same. So this dashboard here is a little bit overwhelming at first because if you do sign up, all these boxes are completely empty. But as you get going, it's smart enough to look at things like trip date, trip status, balances, due dates, things like that to automatically determine what goes where and when it should be there. So just by putting your clients and their bookings in, this will populate for you automatically. And then once you get past that initial learning phase, this becomes a big help because it's a lot of good info, mostly relevant to the clients that you're actually working with. So I'll go through some of the different sections, not all of them, but you have your agent reminders here. This is probably the most popular panel on the entire dashboard because I'm sure you all know how it works. Oftentimes you're booking things that are, let's say, 10 to 12 months out. There's probably a list of things that you need to do along the way for your clients that you can't do at the time of booking because it's too early. So the idea is you can put reminders in now for things that you need to do, say, 6 months from now. And then as you approach the dates in which those are due, they'll pop up here. And then as you complete those items, you can just check these boxes, mark them as complete. They will disappear from the dashboard, and you can move on to the next item. Now, another thing this is used for is you will see things like this web reservation request, web payment request, or somewhere in here will be a web lead request. So those are basically reminders that come in automatically from the system, and those are when clients fill out one of the forms that we have to offer. And if you're on the Pro version, you're welcome to use the forms at no cost to you. And there's three main forms. There's a registration form, a payment form, and what is called a trip leads form, which is a request info form, essentially. And if you want to look at the forms, we have samples of them on our website. If you just go to product and then API forms. Now, I have all of the forms on a single page on our website just because it's easier for demo purposes that way. But generally, on your own website, you would separate them into their own pages. That way, you can make the URL to each form specific, easy to remember, and you can just send it to a client to have them fill out the appropriate form.
So Stephen, I just
so the
want to
registration,
interject. Stephen, I want to interject real quick. So what Stephen is saying is that you are provided with embeddable links to your website. And once you embed those links, you guys know we have embeddable links for the website policies and the client terms and conditions. Think of it as something similar that you can use those links and embed in your website, and then you have those forms readily available or accessible to your customers via your website. Did I explain that correctly, Steve?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
And even if
I just wanted to frame it for them.
Sure. Yeah, and even if you don't have your own website, or maybe you're under a host that controls your website and you don't have a lot of access to edit it, we do have direct links you can send out. It's a pretty lengthy link, so it's hard to memorize, impossible to memorize. But you can always copy and paste it and send it out that way if you needed to. But if you do have a website, that's kind of the ideal situation, because then you can put it on a page with your logo and any information you want, like this, things like that. But it'll work either way. So the registration form would be like a booking form, and these forms are customizable. You can hide things, make things optional or required. You can add your own things. If there's something you want to ask that isn't on the form, you can certainly add that. But this would be, when someone is ready to book, you've already quoted them. They said, hey, that looks great. That's what we want to book. And you send them a link to this form. And there's 5 steps for them to fill out here. So the first one is the guest information. If you have multiple agents on your account, there will be a drop down for them to select who they're working with. In this case, it would be me. It can tell you how many people are going. Let's just say it's a couple. And now they can enter the information for each person: guest 1, guest 2, contact information, trip information. So they'll go back to the quote you sent them to confirm what exactly do they want to book as far as, resort or cruise, dates, room category. Do they want travel protection, other things like that. Payment information, if they want to select and submit a credit card and tell you how much they want to pay for their initial deposit. And then finally, you need, additional information. So request comments, some terms here that are customizable. They will check I agree, enter today's date, sign their name, and submit. So really, this form, the use of it is you're collecting the information straight from the client. And when they do fill that out, it will notify you via email, and you'll have a notification on your dashboard like this. So this is one I did years ago for demo purposes. I just made up a name, pretended I was a client, and filled it out. So now Mark here is on my dashboard. So what that actually does in the system for you is, first you'll see that it created a trip for me. And in the notes of the trip are the details from step 3, so I can see exactly what he wants me to book. I can see he wanted to go on May 7th for 7 nights. The basics of what I need to actually book his trip. And then it also created a profile for him, as well as, in this case, his wife, Cindy, and then linked the two together. I've got his address, and then I've got his full credit card number securely stored in our vault with a note of how much he wants to pay for his initial deposit. So, again, it creates the profile for the client. It puts the responsibility on him for making sure everything's accurate. Make sure, everything's in writing as well. So it's oftentimes when agents aren't using a CRM, they're doing a lot of this over the phone. And unfortunately, if they're telling you the dates and the room category over the phone, and later they're not happy with the room that they're in, there's no proof that you booked exactly what they asked for. Whereas when they fill out a form like that, you've got it. The other forms I won't spend too much time on. They're kind of the same thing, but for different situations. So there's a payment form. This one's generally used for payments after the initial deposit. Let's say a month later, a client wants to make a payment. They have a new card they want to use. This is a way for them to submit that to you. And then finally, we have the leads form, which again is like a request info form. So sometimes you'll get an email from a client that has no subject line, and all it says is want to book a trip. You're like, okay, I'd love to help, but I need a little bit more to go off of than that. You could send them a link to this form and just ask them to fill it out. So this is more basic than the registration form. It's for the step prior to that, where you're just gathering up the initial info. So name and contact info, how many adults are we going, how many children, what are their ages, and then here's kind of, when do they want to go, how many nights, where are they traveling from, where are they interested in going, what's their budget, what's the occasion, what's important, and then things you would ask on a first phone call. So this form will also create a profile for this person here, just like the registration form does. However, rather than creating a trip under that profile, this one will create what is called a trip lead, because at that point it's a little bit early to create a trip. So it creates a lead. So your leads are your clients you're working with that haven't booked yet. And they don't have to fill out the form. You could go into, or you could create a profile, and then you could go into that profile and you could just click add new lead here to create one from scratch. But the idea is, at any given time, this should be a pretty accurate list of every client that you are working with that is not booked yet. You can see kind of what status you're in with them and how many days it's been since you've changed that status, which these are all pretty extreme examples. But obviously, without even looking at names, I know if I quoted someone over 1,000 days ago, it's pretty apparent she's not going to book. So in a real situation, I should have went in there and marked that as lost status, meaning she didn't book, or if she did, I'd mark it as closed status, because closed and lost feeds do not show up here because they're not active. But that information will remain under that client's profile should you need to refer back to it at any time. So that covers our forms. Another very popular thing that we have is kind of automation, mainly email automation. So there's several different ways to email clients out of the system. We have templates for pretty much every kind. The first original type of emails we added when we first launched were these email icons. That was prior to having any automated capabilities. These essentially are tied to email templates that you can pre-set up. So, this one is tied to a final payment reminder email template. And when you click these, it just opens up an email in your preferred email program. Like I use Outlook, so it would open up an Outlook with an email ready to be sent, pre-typed up. And it plugs in things like the balance and due date and the client's name and stuff like that. So you just click that, opens up, click send, go on with your day. Now, those aren't used that often anymore. They are used for sending invoices and a few other things, but for the most part, agents aren't using them for things like final payment reminders because you can automate that. So if we go in here to auto email templates, any agent can enable these, and then they can pick whichever one they want, and they can, enable that exact one. They can put in how many days before the event or whatever it is to trigger it to send, and then they can type whatever they want it to say. So this one is my final payment reminder auto email. I do have it turned on, and I've said I want these to go out 14 days before the due date, and this is what it says. So anywhere you see those these codes here, that's a place where the system is told to replace that code with something from the client's profile or trip. So in this case, the client's name, a link to my payment form, balance, the due date, the booking number, copy of their invoice, things like that. So the nice thing about these is you kind of set it and forget it. Once this is turned on, that's it. There's no other steps. It's not like you have to tag it to be sent every time you book a new trip. It will basically just scan your system every morning looking for clients, in this case, that have a final payment due 14 days from today's date. And if it sees any, it sends this email to them. Now, it's also smart enough to know in some cases when it should not send because it looks at the status of the trip. So if you have a client whose final payment is due 14 days from today, but 2 weeks ago they paid it in full and it's marked as paid in full, it knows not to send to that person. Same goes if you have a client that maybe does have a balance, but their trip was canceled a week ago. It knows not to send to that person as well because it's a canceled trip. So they're pretty good about knowing when they should or should not send automatically. And there are several different templates you can set up. So there are, several options for payments. You can do birthday emails, anniversaries, currently away if you want to check in on the client while they're traveling. This one's actually really controversial with users. They either love it or hate it. There's no in between. I personally like it because it gives you an opportunity first, to just check in with the client while they're away to make sure everything's going all right. I'm sure you've all had a client where you don't hear a word out of them while they're gone, but the minute they come back, they're furious about something that went wrong that, one, wasn't your fault, and two, had they told you, you could have probably fixed the situation for them pretty easily. So this invites them to help you. It can backfire, though, if you have needy clients that'll email you about every little thing. But also you can use it as a way to have your clients tag you on social media if you have business pages. Because, let's be honest, people like to brag on social media when they go on vacation. This can, have them tag you in those brag posts so they can kind of spread the word about your services to all their friends and family. Let them know they can book something similar. Welcome home when they get back home. This is a great opportunity to thank them one last time. Some agents will even put a post-trip survey in here, whether it be about the agents working with the agent, or maybe it's more about the destination, resort, or cruise, or whatever they went on, just to kind of get some good feedback on that. And you have several other ones in here. So each agent can pick and choose which ones they want to use. They can toggle, when they want it to send in relation to the due date, the trip date, the return date, things like that. So these are a very big time saver that we have.
So Stephen, are you
there's another,
let me ask you something. Are you able to bucket your email script? So let's say I have one for contemporary cruise, one for land, one for groups, and then associate a bundle of emails to a particular trip?
yes, but not in here. So I'll show you that now. So that's the third option.
Okay.
So these, and that's the third option that I'm about to show you. The reason why that exists is because these, you're stuck with what you get here on screen. You can't add any additional templates in here, and you can't exactly use, what's in here for something totally different. Like the birthday one, you have to use really for birthdays because it's triggered to send on the day of their, their birthday, and no other time. So you can't really use it for anything but that. However, yes, we do have a third option called email groups. And that is essentially, and I'll show you here in a second, I'm just going to pull up a trip so I can apply it to it. But the email groups is essentially a batch of emails that you can pre-set up ahead of time and apply in bulk to a client's trip based on, whatever criteria you want. So let me find a good trip here as an example. Okay, so here's one to Jamaica that's traveling in March of 2025. Now these email groups, you can set them up, categorize them however you want. Personally, I think it works best to do it by destination for your land bookings and by cruise line for your cruise bookings. But ultimately, it's up to you. Some agents do it by supplier. Some will do it by the type of trip, whatever you want. But I'll just show you as an example for destination. So in here, you can see I've got, Disney, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Mexico, and so on. So we're going to go to my Jamaica trip email. So long ago, I created an email group called Jamaica Trip Emails, and then I've said I want to trigger that from the trip screen, which means that's the screen I want to apply those to. And then in here is where I created the actual email templates. So I've got a bunch in here. So the first one here is Club Mobile. I think that's a great service. It's commissionable. Clients like it. Agents like to sell it. But stuff like this doesn't make you a ton of commission, so a lot of agents just skip that because they're busy. But if you can automate this, the offer at least, why would you not? So I created a template for that where I just said, a little bit about what it is, threw a couple pictures in there. Here's what they get with the arrival. Here's what they get with the departure. And there's also a merge field in here, the 60 before trip date, which is great for using for either a deadline or when they can do something. So, I've got the deadline to book this is 60 before trip date. So what the client will see is an actual date, whatever date equals 60 days before their trip. You can change that 60 to any number you want. So if you wanted to send, if the deadline was 40 days before the trip, just put a 40 in there instead of 60, or 5 or 10 or 100 or whatever you want. And then down here is where you set up the triggers. So I've said I want this to go out 80 days before the client's trip date. And there's a lot of different, basically any date box on the trip screen can be used as a trigger. A lot of these aren't going to be used probably ever, like, date canceled, for example. Really, those 4 main ones, you're going to base it off the created date of the trip, which is typically when they book. That's for when you need to send something out shortly after they book. Or you could use final payment due date, trip date, or return date. So in this case, I've said 80 days before the trip date. And then I've also said default to weekdays only. So if that lands on a Saturday or Sunday, we'll send the Friday before instead. So that's one, for example. You can also do maybe one for excursions, to offer excursions to them. I even got a recipe for jerk chicken. That's not going to make you any money, but it's kind of fun to get excited with them leading up to the trip. So, you can Google a recipe, something cliched from whatever destination they're going to, and send that out to them. You can even do information on resorts that you might sell frequently in that destination. So here would be if they're going to Secrets, Wild Orchid, or St. James. You can put links to on-property activities, pre-book spa appointments, maps of the property, things like that. Any last-minute info, really whatever you want. So I've put these in one time, and now every time I book a trip to Jamaica, I can apply that series of emails here. So I could say Jamaica trip email. And then it's going to do the math based on, in my case, the trip date, and it's going to calculate the dates it's going to send these. Now, the nice thing about ours compared to some of the other CRMs out there, some of the other CRMs go by the supplier, I know, and they just apply them automatically. We looked into doing that originally, but there's too many variables. There may be 1 or 2 emails in that series that aren't needed for every single client. So we wanted a way for agents to be able to pick and choose from that entire list which ones they want to use for each individual trip. So in this case, let's say that they're going to Secrets. So I don't want to send them the couples emails, and they don't need an itinerary. And let's say they already booked excursions. So I'm going to ignore those 4. I'll keep the other 4. And then I have this toggle here. If I turn this off, it only sends this email to the lead person on the trip. If I turn it on like this, it goes to everyone on the trip, assuming you have everyone's email address entered. So let's just say in this case, I'm only in contact with one person anyway, so I'm just going to send them only to him. And I'm going to click apply. Now you can see these send dates. Let's say you had a last minute booking, and this send date is December 1st. Obviously, the system cannot go back in time and send. So if you have a date here that is in the past, and you apply it and don't do anything else, it won't send that ever. However, you can always adjust the send date afterwards. Like, I don't like this. I don't like the idea of sending this on Christmas Day, because every place they've ever shopped in their entire life is probably going to get sales emails on Christmas Day for after Christmas sales. So I feel like mine might get lost in the mix. So I want to change that, but I'm going to go ahead and apply it anyway. And then once I apply it, I can just click edit, and I can change that send date. So let's back it up by, back it up a week. So we'll send a week from today, and click save. and that will send that out on the 18th, and then the jerk chicken recipe in February, information on the resort, and then their last minute info here. Now, if, let's say tomorrow the client emails me because a friend of theirs told them about Club Mobe and I take care of that now, I no longer need this, I can just simply delete it. Or if I don't need any of these, I can check, individual boxes or select all and then delete selected. So that feature alone, I see logs of emails that send each day, and one day I looked over the average over the last few months, and I saw a couple of names in there, frequently individual agent names, and I kind of took an average, and some of our users, just this feature alone, they're using to send out anywhere from 300 to 500 emails per month, every single month. So, that's 300 to 500 emails they don't have to ever think about, or that maybe they were typing from scratch before, now it's all automated. Is that what you were asking about there?
I'm good. Does anybody have any questions? Stephen, are you still with us, or did we lose you?
Yep, I'm here. No, I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, great.
I was just waiting to hear any questions. We've got a quiet bunch today. Okay. So moving on, the next feature, this is where I think we kind of stand out probably the most from a lot of other CRMs out there, is the integrations that we have. We are actually integrated with a lot of different suppliers. So let me find a good trip here. And just to briefly touch, the process to entering bookings, there's three steps. The first is to create the profile. The second would be to add a trip, which is this screen where you put in this information. Now, those two steps, if the client fills out that registration form I showed earlier, it does those two steps automatically for you. So this is where you would start the process if they filled out the form. The third that you would need to do is where you add a new reservation under the trip, which I've already done on this particular trip. And the reservation is where the actual booking details go. So, you enter the flights and the hotel and or the cruise and transfers or whatever. Now, if I were doing this manually from scratch, at this point, I would need to add individual reservation components for every piece of this booking. So air, add new. If there's connecting flights, add a second air, then a transfer. And then I would just scroll down here and I would fill out the details, including the pricing. So the flights were $19.48. The transfers included, so that's $0. Hotel is $38.68, and so on. So I'd put all those prices in, and then when I save that, it adds up the totals here, which populates here, and then that also carries over to the trip screen we were on just a second ago. Now, how you get that information in is pretty heavily dependent on which supplier it is you book with, because, as I mentioned, a lot of the suppliers we're integrated with, so you can simply put in the type, the supplier, the booking number, and then you can just click this button and it will actually import all the booking details for that particular booking for you. In fact, that's what I did on this exact booking. I actually have an account with ALG that I use for testing purposes. So back in 2021 here, I logged into Vax, I made a fake booking, I went far enough to get a booking number, and then I imported it here, and it pulled in all these details for me. The pricing, the deposit requirements, client's information, the commission amount, and then all of these details here. And putting that stuff in is essentially building the invoice for the client. So it's a big time saver there. So as of today, these are the suppliers that we are directly integrated with, these first two sections here. So from ALG down to Pleasant Holidays and everything in between. Now, this group here, not only can you import bookings in, you can also submit payments to them from VacationCRM. So that travel impressions booking I just had up, if that client wanted to make a $100 payment today, I don't even need to log into Vax to do that. I can just add a payment to their trip, select the credit card that you have stored that they want to use, put in the amount, and click Submit Payment to Supplier, and that'll send a message to Vax to basically say, run this card for this amount towards this booking, which their system will do immediately, and within a few seconds, they'll send a response back letting you know if the card went through or if it was declined for whatever reason. So that works with these suppliers here. This group here, you can import bookings in, but you cannot submit payments to them from the system. So this is something we're always working on, growing this list and adding to it. A lot of the limitation, though, is on the supplier side because not all of them have the technology on their end to send data to an outside system. So, unfortunately, we can't have everyone. However, we do have another feature called the VacationCRM Stripper that works with these suppliers here. And so what the stripper does is it allows you to take the confirmation email that you get from the supplier, and if that particular supplier uses an HTML format like what Vax uses or Disney or Unique Vacations, you would copy and paste it into the system. If it's a PDF like what most cruise lines use, you would just upload the PDF into the system, and it will strip out the relevant information and put it in the correct reservation components for you, including the pricing and things like that. So it's not quite as good as being directly integrated, but it's kind of the next best thing. And then moving on, while we're on the screen, we're also connected with some of the pre-registration programs that mainly all-inclusive chains have, but sometimes destinations, tourism boards have programs as well. So as of today, Hard Rock or Charisma, you can pre-register those. And then we're also connected with My Booking Rewards, which if you're not familiar with them, they're kind of, I guess you could say like a technology company. They handle the pre-registration program for several different vendors. So Original Resorts, Blue Diamond, Coconut Bay, and also the Dominican Republic Tourism Board. So any of those you can pre-register right from VacationCRM, as well as the St. Lucia Tourist Board. And then finally, other integrations, we are connected with Project Expedition and Travify, and another one we just finished, I haven't even announced yet, but I probably will later on this afternoon, is we are integrated with Shore Excursions Group as well now. So if you use them and sync your account, so basically you can tag any cruise booking to be sent to them, and so to basically send them your client's name and trip information and email address, and then they can offer excursion options to them. And of course, if your client books, you get the commission for it. And that works the same way with Project Expedition as well.
That's great. That's a
Any
great
questions
feature
on any
to
of
have.
that?
That's an amazing
Yeah,
feature
for
to have.
sure.
I love that.
Okay, I do see there's a question. Does VCRM have the capability to allow assistance access without giving login? No, you'd want to give them their own login, their own separate login. I mean, technically they could log in as you. We don't limit, you could have two people using the same login technically. I don't like the idea of doing that for an assistant though, because you'd be giving them full admin access. And we also keep logs of information. Like if somebody goes rogue and deletes a bunch of stuff out of your account, we can see who did it and when to let you know, and we can provide, the records that were deleted and what time it was done. So if they're logging in as you, it's going to say you deleted all that. So you really don't have any proof if needed. If you create a separate user for them within your account, you can limit what access they have, and if something goes wrong, we can track things like that. And then are we integrated? We're not integrated with Flowdesk at this time. It might be something in the future, but not at this time.
Do you have any integrations with third-party marketing systems like a Flowdesk? I know there really isn't anybody in the industry that I can think of.
No, but we're very close to being finished with an integration with MailChimp. And so basically what that'll do is when a profile is created in VacationCRM, it will send that information over to your MailChimp account for your marketing list. So that's there. And then we're also connected with Zapier. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Zapier, but to oversimplify what their system does is it's a software that is designed to kind of bridge the gap between two other pieces of software that normally couldn't communicate with each other. So basically anything you do, there's this Zapier notification. You can set triggers. So you can say when a profile is created or edited, send this information from the profile to Zapier, and then Zapier can send it to a third party like Flowdesk or MailChimp or Google Sheet or whatever. You can do that when a profile is created or edited, a trip is created or edited, a reservation is created or edited, pretty much anything. So that's a little bit more involved, but it opens the door pretty wide open to do whatever you want with the data in here, because Zapier is connected with like thousands of programs out there.
So they can create Zaps for Flowdesk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I don't know I'm not familiar enough with Flowdesk to know how and when that would be useful, but yeah, it can be done.
Okay. Great. That's,
All
I know,
right.
a pain point. Yeah, that's a pain point for a lot of people to not have the marketing
Sure.
component integrated. I see it talked about all the time on social media.
Yeah, and we're also integrated with Signature Travel Network. That too hasn't been announced because we're just kind of working out some final upgrades to that. So I don't know if anyone's a member of those, and we're working on some of the other ones that are similar to them at the moment as well.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. All right. So I know we're kind of running a little bit short on time here, so I want to talk. Another big functionality we have is groups. We have a lot in the system to help you manage your groups. Now, the process of entering bookings, kind of how I went through there, is pretty much the same whether it's part of a group or not. The only real difference from anything you've seen so far is this spot right here on the trip screen. So if this trip was part of a group, I would say it is part of whichever group. And these are my group profiles that I've created. So when you book a group, especially a contracted group, the first thing you want to do when you know the group is going to happen, I already opened this, is you can search here by last name or group. If you know you haven't created a profile for that group, you can just do that here. Now, initially, this is the entire screen, so it's very basic information. The group name, the type, you can put in the supplier, the trip date, final payment date, and that's about it. However, once you do that, once you create that, it kind of expands out to give you a whole lot more information. Now, initially, you're not going to have any information here. You're not going to have any trips linked to it. The second thing you're going to want to do is put in your inventory. So you can see here, I've got 20 rooms on hold for this group. 2 are clearly a made-up name of new room. I've got 3 family suite ocean views, 3 swim outs, 5 ocean view, and 7 junior suites. So that's my inventory. And then what we also did is we added a registration form that is tied to that group. So originally, agents were using that same registration form I showed you earlier for everything, whether it was part of a group or not. The problem with that generic form is, sometimes, a cousin of a wedding couple might fill out that form. They're ready to book. You've never even talked to them. You have no clue who this is. So you have no idea which group they're part of. And you can normally tell by the resort and the dates they chose, but maybe you saw a lot of groups and you have 2 at the same place with overlapping dates, and now you got to reach out and ask. Or you had to add a custom field to the form. But now that's no longer needed because they can just fill out this form, which is pretty much the same. But when they submit this, it will automatically link them to the group that they're part of. The other difference is in step 3, the room type is no longer a text box. It's a required drop-down, so it basically forces them to select from the options that are available. And when you add those, you can choose whether you want to hide the inventory or show the inventory. It's totally up to you. Personally, I think it's best to be hidden, because if you have clients that are like me that procrastinate, if I see there's plenty available, it tells me I can put it off for now, wait till later. Whereas if I don't know and I see some of them already sold out, I'm probably going to fill this out now. So when they submit this, it's just like the other one. It'll notify you. It will link their trip to the group here, and it will pull the room that they selected out of the available inventory here. So like this is the sold out one, so that you can't overbook those. Another thing you can do with your groups as well is you can create a group page with the information. Now, out of all the group functionality, I think this is probably the least used because a lot of agents already have a process for putting together the information for the group. whether it be a hidden page on your website or something like that. But for those that, I've seen a lot of agents that are just creating a Word document and converting it to a PDF and sending that out, which isn't ideal because PDFs aren't great on mobile devices. Not to mention if you have a mistake in there, once it's out there, it's out there. You'd have to create a new one and send the new one out. Whereas this is just kind of like a single web page you can create to provide, in this case with Chris and Laura, they can pass it out to their friends and family with all the information. So this is a sample of what that can look like, and you can put whatever information you want in there. I picked these 4 items to include. So first is just kind of an introduction. This would be my agency name, handling the travel arrangements for Chris and Laura's wedding. Here's information on the resort. You can embed videos in there if you want. You can show them specifically which rooms are options for this group with, some description and pictures. They can click on these images if they want to see larger, detailed images. And then you can include, like the room rates and then the steps to book. And then if, everything looks good, they're ready to book, they can click book now and fill out the form. So, like I said, that's heavily optional. If you already have a solution for doing something similar to that, you can continue to use that. You don't have to use the group pages that we have built in. But if you do, we have templates created for a lot of hotels already in there you're welcome to use, or you can create your own templates if you're selling some obscure hotel that we don't have a template for, or you don't like the template we've created, you can create your own. It's totally up to you. Now, those email groups that I talked about earlier, you can apply those at a group profile level as well. So much like I applied those Jamaica emails to that Jamaica trip, I could apply a series of emails specifically for this group, and it would send out to everyone in the group, assuming that they have a trip with a valid status, like deposited, paid in full, traveled, things like that. So basically it doesn't send to anyone that's expired or canceled or anything like that. Another feature too is this group info page. So this is a big pain point. I talked to a lot of agents a few years back, asking them, what's a headache for you with groups? And a lot of them was clients that were very needy. Like let's say Chris and Laura here are both emailing you separately a couple times a week each, asking for updates on who's booked, who hasn't, what rooms are available. So, in the old days, agents had a spreadsheet that they would have to keep up with, and they'd have to send it out to the agent or to the client. And then let's say you send it, and then an hour later somebody else books, and now it's outdated already. This is a link that's designed to share with the group leader, and it's synced up to your system. So you can basically say, hey, if you're considering emailing me to ask for an update on, who's booked into what room and which rooms are available, stop what you're doing and just click this link because it's synced up to my system. So they can do that, and they can see, specifically, here's the 20 rooms, 4 of them are booked. Here are the people that are in each room, when they're traveling, how many nights, and then these are the empty ones. So, if it's getting close to penalty time, they can say, hey, we're not booking any of these. Maybe we should drop a couple of those. I don't think we're going to fill them, things like that.
That's a great feature.
Then,
I didn't know that you guys had that.
Yeah, that's very popular because, especially if you're juggling a lot of groups at once and you have group leaders that are, quick to email you, that can cut down on a lot of those emails. And it's also kind of, that same page is used for something else, which I'll talk about here in a second, this checkbox here. So initially this checkbox would not be checked, and it would just allow them to see, just this, for the rooming purposes. But the other pain point I saw a lot of with agents is, I've discovered that agents, especially those that book contract groups, will do everything in their power to avoid booking air for their groups. However, most group contracts include transportation. So there's kind of a disconnect there. So at some point you need your clients to send you their flight schedule. Now there's a way to manually send this air collector form. It's just a simple form they fill out with like the PNR, who's on what flight, the flight information, stuff like that, and submit it. And it tracks who you have flights for and who you don't. So right here, these are all my clients that are linked to this group. and I've got green check marks all the way down, which means I've got everyone's flights. But if there were any red X's here, that means I'm missing that person's flight. Now that form, you can also have it go, you can have it sent out via an email group. So, I've got an email group with 3 separate emails to send out to say, hey, client, I need your flight information. Because you send one out, 50% of the people will actually do it. The other will ignore it. Then you send another one out to the 50% that ignored the first one. And let's say you grab, another 50% of those. And then I have a third one that's a little bit more urgent or aggressive or whatever you want to call it, where I started using a bold red font, where I tell them, hey, this is your last chance to send me your flights if you want to ride, to and from the airport. And then you can use this again. If we scroll to the bottom, it creates essentially a spreadsheet of all the flights. So you could send this to your transfer company, and you can export it to Excel to send it to them, or you could send them the link if you wanted to, and they could sort by arrival first, and they could say, okay, on the 21st, we have 2 pickups at 11:20, 1 at 11:55 for these clients on these airlines and these flight numbers. And then for departures, same thing on the 25th, 1:22, 24:50 for these people. And then it also asks the client on there, do they have any children that need car seats? And if so, what's their weight? So they kind of know what size of car seat they're needing. And then it also asks for their during travel contact numbers. So I'm sure we've all been on a shared transfer. There's like 2 people that are MIA and you're all waiting for them. So they've got a phone number they can call them and say, hey, where you at? So you've got that as well.
I really like
And
that
then
because
there are also
I work with a couple of advisor friends who do a lot of groups, and I know they're doing a lot of this manually inside of spreadsheets. So this is a great feature to have as well.
Yep, for sure. So I think that covers a lot of the system, not everything. I guess I will just say one other thing where I think we really excel is our reporting capabilities. We have actually 2 whole separate reporting systems. If you go to reports, we have the system reports, which are the original ones that we've always had, which are kind of like on-screen spreadsheet format type of deal. And then we have custom reports where you can create your own for absolutely anything, and those are a lot more advanced. You can do, pie charts, bar graphs, list reports. You can even do a map report. Like if you wanted to see what destinations you sell most often, it shades in the countries darker green as you sell more volume there. And you can do it by number of trips or dollars sold, however you want. Really, there's all sorts of things you can do with those. And then if you wanted kind of less about reports but quick charts, you could do the financial dashboard here as well, which would show you, I don't know if I have any bookings in here for this date range, but you've got, this is like a donut chart. Sorry, I'm having internet issues today, but once it loads, this would be a donut chart. You can have bar graphs for like sales by month. Yeah, see, I don't have anything. Let's do, there we go. So you can see who has sold what for the month, sales by month, year over year, and then sales trends, which is similar to this, but it's cumulative. So it's, in a real situation, it should be more of like a curve. We can do month to date, quarter to date, year to date. Sales by agent, sales by supplier for your top 10, commissions by month, you're expecting your actual, and then your trip leads. What dollars do you have in each status of trip lead? So, these are nice for just quick visual numbers, essentially, or you can go hop over to reports and get more actual data. So I think that's probably enough to overwhelm everyone for now. Does anyone have any questions?
I think that we are all out of questions, but I really love all of the features and functionality that you've shown. It is an incredibly robust system, and I really think that it's intuitive for solo advisors and is incredibly robust for agency owners who have a lot of ICs. And you showed me some functionality that I didn't know existed. I've played around inside of it a little bit here and there, but I had no idea. I loved your groups component. That was incredible. And I know we're out of time, so I just really wanted to thank you so much for being here today, Steve. We will place this recording up on our YouTube channel. Now, for those who are watching the replay, if they have questions, is there someone that they can reach out to directly with questions, or do you guys have additional live demos? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have a YouTube channel. You can just search Vacation CRM, all one word, and you can see a lot of videos. Like I have a longer version of this demo. It goes over more functionality in there on the YouTube channel. Or if you just want to ask a specific question, you can email sales@vacationcrm.com. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And, also know that, one thing that I like about Vacation CRM is we have a full team of development teams. That this is their job. Some of the others out there, they hired someone to build something and kind of called it a day, where ours is ongoing. So, we have multiple developers that this is their full-time job. So, for their own job security, we have to give them stuff to do, but that results in, extra features for you, selling points for us. So, one of the big things we're working on now is I think where we're lacking, if I had to pick our weakness, is, the look of the system. For the longest time, we didn't care because, if you can spend an hour adding a feature that's going to save everyone time or make it look pretty, we chose the time saver every time. But I'm not naive. I realize that, the look of something affects your mood and how you feel about something. So I know it looks kind of dated. It's functional. It just isn't pretty. So we have a designer that's working with us now. So we're doing a lot of back-end work to prep for that. But early next year, we'll have a completely new user interface. It's going to be a lot more modernized. And with that will come extra features as well, AI stuff, things like that.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to it, and we'll have to have you on again once you have all of those updated features and your new UI. And I will be in touch with you very soon as well. And I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. As Nicole said, this was great. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. And thanks again, Stephen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.